Welcome to a quick demo of the capabilities of Strongpoint, the automated documentation, change management, and compliance system for NetSuite. Strongpoint is the only native tool for any of these capabilities on the NetSuite platform. We're going to start off with documentation. The first thing that Strongpoint does when you put it in an account is it automatically documents all the customizations to the system and all the dependencies between them. And one of the views it produces is this very, very popular E or D view. In this case, we're looking at the customer record, and we can see all the custom fields on the customer record, and we could also see the standard fields that have customization tied to them if we wanted to. If somebody, for example, was asking us if they could change the company size field, we were wondering if that was a safe thing to do, we can quickly check it. We can easily see that the company size field uses the company size list, which is probably what we want to change, and we can very quickly confirm that it's not used anywhere else. We can then check to see if there's any scripting or workflow that applies to it. And the answer, of course, in this case is no. And so even if you had never seen this NetSuite account before, you could then be in a position to make a decision about the relative safety of changing things. There are a couple of searches we might want to look at, and we can look at those very quickly, and we realize that this search hasn't been used since June of 2017, so therefore it's probably fairly safe to use it. But if the search was being used, we'd be able to understand who was using it, what parts of the company they worked for, which subsidiaries, for example, in different departments, and we could also be able to look at all the other dependencies that the search has. If you look at a different field, for example, I'm going to look at the set customer credit on hold, immediately the risk becomes apparent. We can see that there's a workflow, and if we click on the workflow, we can see that there's also scripting that connects to that workflow as well, and that the workflow depends upon a search, and that there are other data sources, in this case, a good example of standard data sources that are used as well. So the ERD diagram enables you to very quickly ask questions and get good answers. Because all the documentation is created as custom records in NetSuite, is also entirely searchable. So we can navigate to this in a non-ERD way and see all the information. And here we can see that this field appears on the customer record and also the partner record. And we can see we can see the list, and we can see the two searches that we were looking at before. The documentation can also be used to accomplish things. One of the first things people want to do is look at cleaning up their NetSuite account. Over time, NetSuite accounts get very complicated, and a lot of things that were a good idea a few years ago may not be a good idea now. So in this case, we're searching for transaction body fields that haven't been used in more than 6 months. And we can see that for each of the fields, we're being shown when the date last used that was detected by the system. And we see some from 16, some from 2014, and then we see some where it shows the date of December 31st, 1969. That essentially means that this field has never been used, and the system has gone all the way back, and it uses the default JavaScript date in order to indicate that it's checked everything and it has never been used. This is, of course, a demo account. That's probably unlikely to occur in your account. Before cleaning things up, we'd like to know if there are any scripts or searches or workflows or integrations that depend upon it. And we can quickly check that. And we can see that for most of these, we're in pretty good shape. But in these particular cases, we've got some scripts right here, and we've got some searches and mass updates down here. And so we probably want to look into that before we clean things up. In particular, in relation to the script, one has to wonder if the field has no data in it, what is the script doing? And often there's another way of looking at this to identify scripts that are touching fields that are no longer being used, and this is a great way to identify optimization opportunities. A common cleanup activity that people want to engage in is cleaning up saved searches. They accumulate fairly rapidly over time, and getting rid of them can greatly simplify communication and navigation and ensure that people are using the right source of data for the right question. Strongpoint has automated rules that can be set up that automatically go through and figure out which of the saved searches need to be archived. And the reason we call it archiving is we store the definition of the saved search so that if somebody wants to resurrect it and bring it back, they can quickly reinstall the saved search from our records. In this case, somebody wants to find any saved searches that haven't been used in the last 13 months, and they want to exclude a whole bunch of sensitive types of searches, such as scheduled searches or ones that send triggered emails. They want to automate the communication with users who own or use the saved searches to make sure that people have a chance to review it, and Strongpoint will automate that communication. And then Strongpoint will automatically exclude particularly dangerous changes so that you don't have to worry about that. So if, for example, a script was referring to the search, Strongpoint would not include it in the list. And this can be set up and then run on a regular basis. We can also use the data to compare environments. And so, for example, if somebody was wondering if the script, they're having an error in one environment but not in the other environment, and they want to find out if there's a difference between the scripts, or you could be looking at all your user roles, or you'd be looking at a record and seeing if, or a form and seeing if the fields on it are the same. You can quickly do the comparison by logging in using your login information, or if you have token-based authentication enabled, which is definitely best practice, you can use that. And we can request Strongpoint to do a comparison between two environments. In this case, our production sandbox environments. And we can see that, in fact, there is a difference. The schedule script is different in the target environment from the production environment. And if we want to see more about that, we can see the actual diff of the code in order to understand what the actual difference is. So here we can see what was being added or removed from this code, and you see it's quite different. The next part of this is to move on to compliance processes. And the first part is enabling people at the ticket level to very, very quickly understand the risk, and therefore the prioritization and the appropriate change process for different types of changes. I'm going to show you this inside a process issue, which is our ticket that's native to the NetSuite system, to the Strongpoint NetSuite system, but you can also do this in Jira and ServiceNow as well. And so for somebody is asking to change the demo search, which we were looking at earlier, and Strongpoint accurately says, look, you don't need permission or approval in order to change that search. There's no dependencies on it. It's not even being used. You can go ahead and change that. If we look at a slightly different thing and look at, in this case, at a custom report that was developed that has been flagged as being an important report, and this can typically would apply to your financially related, but it can also apply to sales reports like this. The Strongpoint will properly say that you need a change request, you need business approval, you do not necessarily need to go through a complex IT process to make this change. By way of contrast, if you want to make a change to a field, such as the industry type field, Strongpoint will say that you need to go through sandbox development and testing, because in this particular case, we don't make changes to the data model in production. That's not a very good idea, but we don't need to go through a complex full software development lifecycle, because Strongpoint automatically understands that there's no scripting against this field. There's nothing really to test except possibly these searches. And then if we look at a change to a different field, or to the set customer credit on hold field that we looked at earlier, Strongpoint automatically warns the person that this needs to be a full software development lifecycle. So you need to, basically, if you're going to make a change to this field, you're going to have to test some code and some workflows. And of course, on these process issues and on our change requests, you automatically see the ERD diagram, so that the person getting this warning can automatically or very quickly understand where the risk comes from. This sort of information tends to produce much more user satisfaction when dev goes back to the person requesting the change and explains why. It's not we can't get to it because we don't know what the risk is. It's we do know what the risk is, and we're going to have to test all of this stuff, and therefore we need to run a special process so your change will be delayed. Change requests, which again can be either Strongpoint change requests or change requests in Jira or ServiceNow, enable us to then go to a further extent and start running a process around this. So in this case, we have a number of customizations, the number of daily script executions field, that demo search that we looked at earlier, and the industry type field that we looked at earlier. And Strongpoint is coming back and saying that this change requires a full software development lifecycle, which for most companies means that you get an approval to do it, and then you get an approval to release it. And those are the reason there's often a two-step process in there is, first of all, to allow for oversight on whether this is even a good idea. And then secondly, to make sure that there are appropriate steps have been taken to test things before they are released back into production. It's also warning that this is going to affect multiple subsidiaries because some of these objects are being used by people in multiple subsidiaries. And then it is going to organize the approval process. That can be a very simple approval process like we have here, or very complicated using the owners of different processes or even different approvers from different subsidiaries. As with all of our records, we're trying to make it really clear what the risk is. So right here, we can read what the risks, and we get a very straightforward warning. This is the industry type field is a field. If you're going to change it, you need to archive the data, and there's tools in Strongpoint for doing that. In addition, it's warning you that there are dependent scripts, so that's a technical warning. And then, of course, the same warning that you need to archive the data. If you're actually going to change the field, you should archive the data to protect it. But it's also warning here that there's a dependent managed bundle. This field comes from a managed bundle, and therefore if you change it, it probably won't stay changed. If they update the bundle, it'll probably put it back. Again, you can see the ERD for this. And then we can also, when we actually make changes, the changes will be automatically reconciled onto this record. This saves a staggering amount of time compared to going through system notes and trying to attach them onto tickets. In fact, this often saves our customers 90% of the time required to prepare for audit because it's done automatically for them. We can also compare environments just in the context of a change request. We looked at the environment compare earlier. In this case, this is a pre-development validation. We want to make sure that if we're going to work on something, that that our development environment has those objects and that they are the same at the beginning of the process. Otherwise, we could end up developing on the wrong version of something. And we've done the comparison, and they're not the same. And we can go into this and dig into it to find out more about that. Strongpoint best practices also include the ability to do post-deployment validation to make sure that after you move things over, you've done so accurately and effectively, and that there are no differences, which minimizes the chances of there being an unexpected issue in production because somebody made a mistake migrating something. On top of the change management process is a set of reporting designed to make compliance as simple as possible. And one of the most important of these is the Open Non-Compliant Changes report. In this case, what the report is doing is it's finding all of the changes that were made in the account that did not have prior approval. And this is called a closed loop change management system. Everything goes through change management. Hopefully most things go through prior approval, whether that be in Jira, or ServiceNow, or in Strongpoint. But if anything doesn't go through approval, Strongpoint will catch it. And it will catch it even if the object itself didn't change. So for example, if you add scripting to a field and that was not a safe thing to do because there's already scripting on that field, Strongpoint will catch it. And in addition to the change to the script, it will actually catch that was a change to the field. And here we can see that we have a change in a mass update that is being flagged as having software dependencies, and so it's saying very, very high level of change control required. And we see other ones get flagged here, whether it's making changes to code, for example, or workflows, and flagging those as very, very high levels of change requests required. By following a very simple review process, you can get to the bottom of this and stay on top of it. Of course, nobody's actually running change control in this demo account, so you won't have 1,774 of these. You'll have a handful of them because Strongpoint will automatically clear most of the things that don't matter to you, rather. On top of the change management process, we have an entire SOD system. And the SOD system is not only designed to help you manage segregation of duties within your NetSuite account to make sure that the same person isn't able to do multiple parts of the same transactional process, but also to enable you to rapidly implement SOD, because implementing SOD often requires a review of your user roles. And Strongpoint has tools for both reviewing it ahead of SOD implementation and also doing access reviews on an ongoing basis in a way that makes it massively more efficient than the way people conventionally do it. So in addition to having a library of over 140 rules, We also have an integration at the employee record that allows you to, in fact, set up rules that completely block certain types of access. The typical one we see is blocking admin access. So this, right now, any admin can give anybody else admin access. In a Strongpoint system, that's no longer true. If somebody tries to give the admin access to John Smith here, it's going to catch it, and we can make a blocking rule. For most SOD violations, you wouldn't put a blocking rule in place. You would simply put a warning rule in place, and the person would be warned. They would be able to preview the violation and warned, and the information would show up right on the employee record, and it would be logged and cleared. Now, as I mentioned, there are tools to enable you to implement SOD very quickly, and this is really using all the parts of Strongpoint together. In this case, we're looking at role assignments that are no longer used, or that haven't been used in more than 6 months, because we can simplify our SOD implementation process by removing accesses that nobody is using. And you can see how this will be very useful during access reviews as well. There's an entire library of these reports that enable you to find roles that are not being used at all, roles that are assigned but not in use, roles that are not in use by some people, so they're assigned, and then you can also be able to identify any permissions that are not being used. And we have an entire methodology for quickly cleaning up the permissions that are not being used on user roles to greatly simplify and speed up the SOD implementation. Some of the problems you'll run into SOD simply can't be resolved by permissions on user roles, simply either because you don't have the right number of people, or because, so you can't break up the transaction cycle in that way, or because there just isn't, it is impossible to slice the workflow by user roles alone. So Strongpoint has a full detective control system that produces verifiable, auditable detective control events that are based on an entire library of our controls, or you can build your own. They're simply built out of safe searches, and they can be very, very rapidly configured. So that's an overview of the entire system. There are lots of other tools that round this out, but I hope this was helpful and informative. If you'd like to know more about any of this, please contact us, book a demo, and we're happy to walk you through any of these capabilities in detail. And of course, the adoption of this system is something we take very, very seriously. We honor the trust that you place in us when you adopt this. So we'd be happy to introduce you to other customers who have greatly simplified their compliance and greatly simplified their NetSuite management by using these tools. Thanks for your time.